Hey, what's going on, guys? Today I decided to do a bit of a video that I've seen a lot on the interwebs, and it's something that I've always been fascinated in, and I love to hear the stories behind this topic, and that is what are my favorite movies to watch? Not my top 10 list, not my top 5 list, but what are my favorite movies? What are movies that have stood out to me? Now, I went around my room and I was going shelf to shelf, pile to pile, trying to track down movies in my collection. And there's a few that I have either left out because I skipped past them or because I just couldn't find them. And none more notable than one of my favorite movies of all time, Good Will Hunting. One of the cardinal rules of having a movie collection is having your movies organized, but I don't have that. I don't have the space to have a cohesive, organized collection, or at least that's what I tell myself. So my movies are kind of like all over the place, but I've always kind of prided myself on knowing the general area where my movies were. And for some reason, I thought Good Will Hunting was right over there, and I searched through that pile over and over again and just couldn't find it. But it is one of my favorite movies of all time, and it was actually one of the movies that I started off my movie collection with. Right after Robin Williams' passing, I went back and I watched a bunch of his catalog on Netflix and stuff like that, and Good Will Hunting was one that always stood out to me and was my favorite movie for a very long time. So without any further ado, and like I said, no particular order. This isn't a top 10. This isn't an organized list, an organized stack. My movie taste. So I'm trying to push this stack of movies back, but my Woody Funko Pop is stuck. My Woody Funko Pop is stuck, and it won't allow me to push this stack of movies back. Like I said, no particular order. When it comes down to movies, I will watch a movie, I will fall in love with it, and then it might just kind of go away in my mind, and once I revisit it, encapsulates that love. But these are movies that I know that I truly love, and they have nostalgia, they have rewatchability. They're movies that I would recommend to folks. And like I said, not everything is here, because I'm sure I missed over some things. And if I was really going to go all out, I would probably have about 100 movies stacked right here. But I wanted to kind of a cohesive stack of movies that you would get an understanding of what kind of person I am when it comes to movies. So without any further ado, let's get started with Jurassic Park. This movie right here means a lot to me. When I was going through a fairly rough time, I popped this on, and it sent me into a world that I forgot that I loved. And since then, I've watched it many, many more times, and it holds it holds my top 1 favorite movie of all time, with another movie which is somewhere down this list, and I will pull it out right now. So my top two favorite movies of all time, which both hold the number 1 spot, is Jurassic Park and Ferris Bueller's Day Off. Now, when it comes to Ferris Bueller's Day Off, it's for totally different reasons. I have always loved the friendships and the relationships in this movie because they feel accurate. They don't feel like they're trying to hide anything. Ferris Bueller is a bit of a manipulative guy, right? I mean, and his friends see that, but they still love him, and they still want to help him out, and they still want to do stuff, and they want to have a fun time while doing it. And I love this movie, and I love breaking the fourth wall, or and Ferris talking to the audience. And I think it's a great mechanic that not many movies use, and when they try to, it feels too forced. It doesn't feel like it should be in that movie. certain characters looking at the camera or referencing themselves. It just kind of feels forced. But this movie, it was written for that. Ferris Bueller is the Deadpool of the teenage, coming to age stories. Spiderman Homecoming. Spider-Man is my favorite superhero of all time, and has been since 2002, I believe, when Tobey Maguire first made his run at Spider-Man. My VHS copy of it was absolutely destroyed with how many times I watched it, and the cardboard sleeve was falling apart. And Spider-Man Homecoming is my most watched MCU film to date. I just love it. I can't get over it. I don't get tired of it. It feels like Spidey to me, and I love it. Big Hero 6. Another, movie that I watched recently again. The night before Disney Plus was released, I watched Big Hero 6 in kind of preparation for it. And I love this movie. It's perfect. It's funny. It's whimsical. It's charming. The characters are great. Baymax is just the most lovable Disney character. Stitch and Baymax are my two favorite Disney characters, and they're unmatched with just how stinking adorable they are. And it's a beautiful movie. It has so many great life lessons and lessons about death and acceptance and friendship and believing in yourself, and there's just it's a great movie. It's so multi-layered. X-Men First Class, my favorite X-Men movie. It's just I love origin stories. I absolutely love origin stories because there's so many iconic moments that you get to see unfold. And First Class is just one of the better origin stories in superheroes, because it deals with multiple origin stories that aren't necessarily solidified in people's memories. We all know Peter Parker gets bit by a radioactive spider, and we all know his uncle dies. We all know that Batman's parents get shot in an alleyway. We all know Superman crashes to Earth. But the X-Men are a little bit different, and I love that. The ending always sends shivers throughout my entire body, just absolute goosebumps, when Magneto curves the bullet and ends up paralyzing his good friend Charles Xavier. The Dark Knight. There's nothing I can say about this movie that others haven't said already, so I won't even try. This is not just a superhero movie. It's everything that Batman and the Joker and Gotham and Two-Face, it's everything that they should be, and it's executed beautifully, and it, like I said, there's nothing I can say that hasn't been said before. Castaway. I love not even redemption stories, but survival stories. I love seeing people pit against the worst odds and coming out on top and becoming a better person because of that, and watching the world change around them unbeknownst to them because they're just trying to survive. Tom Hanks is my favorite actor of all time, and he is outstanding in this movie. One of his best performances, which is very hard because I feel like every single one of his performances is his best. Just love Tom Hanks. But Castaway. Speaking of survival stories, The Martian. Matt Damon is absolutely fantastic. Like I mentioned before, Good Will Hunting, one of my favorites. And this movie is just fun. It's fun. It's dark. It shows adaptation at its finest in a way that might make or might leave the audience feeling alienated, but they do it in such a way where you don't, where you are following this man step by step, and you're rooting for him. And when he fails, you feel like you failed, but when he wins, you feel like you win. And it's a beautiful movie. Tom Hanks again in a survival situation. Apollo 13. I've only seen this movie one time ever, but it's always stuck out to me. And I love true events, and though this movie is filled with a bunch of, what's the word I'm looking for? A bunch of inaccuracies. I still love it, and I think it's one of the best space survival stories, movies, directed by Ron Howard, and I believe it's Kevin Bacon, Tom Hanks, and I can't make out the third guy, Bill Paxton. It's amazing. Ed Harris, I believe, is in this movie too. It's an amazing survival story, and it's one of those ones where, like I said, I've only seen it one time, but it's still here, and it's still here. So I just had to mention it. My favorite Quentin Tarantino movie of all time, Django Unchained. I watched this and I introduced this to my friend about a month and a half ago, and I love this movie. It's everything that I expect from Tarantino and more. I think it's one of his most underrated in his catalog of movies. You have movies like Pulp Fiction and Kill Bill that stand above the rest, I feel. But Django Unchained is by far my favorite. When it comes to comedies, I cannot go wrong with Paul. And I don't know why I love this movie so much. Maybe it's because it starts out at Comic-Con, and as you can see from my background, I love that. I love the duo of Simon Pegg and Nick Frost, and add Seth Rogen in there as a crude alien that loves to show his ass, and it's amazing. It's funny, it's smart, surprisingly, and it has a bunch of great cameos that you're not really expecting, but they're surely welcomed. We're going into science fiction. We got a little bit of Star Trek, the reboot of Star Trek. I think that these three movies, Star Trek Into Darkness, and Star Trek Beyond, are some of my favorite sci-fi movies because they're fun. They're fun. They have great characters. The visuals are outstanding. This movie came out in 2009, I believe, and it stands up against some of the modern day CGI, and it still looks more believable than some of the stuff that they put out today. I love this movie. I rewatch this movie at least once a year, maybe twice, and the other two are just absolutely outstanding. And I'm really looking forward to the newly announced, newly talked about Star Trek 4. And here's to hoping that it's good. We have District 9. This movie is a lot of things. And it was a lot of things that I did not expect. And I think that's what I like about the most. Is you think you know what this movie is, and then you don't. It's not a wild goose chase. It's not twists and turns. This movie is pretty coherent. It's just not what you expect. And what were they called? They were not the shrimps, but what do other folks call shrimps? The prawn. The prawn are so believable, and they feel so realistic. They feel like they're in the real world, that there's points where I'm watching and I'm like, holy shit, that's a real alien. So it's just it. And it deals with a lot of things like racism and segregation and humans' lack of empathy. And it's again a very multi-layered movie. The Mask, a childhood favorite of mine. Jim Carrey at his best. 1994. gave us 3 of Jim Carrey's best work: Ace Ventura, Pet Detective, The Mask, and Dumb and Dumber. That is what I call Jim Carrey's big year. Though The Mask is my standout in all those, the movie that I definitely watched the most. My VHS copy again was completely in tatters. I even got a Jack Russell when I was a kid that looked very similar to Milo in this movie, and I named him Milo. Now, unfortunately, Milo didn't like me very much and attacked me anytime or at any chance he got. But I still was such a big fan of the movie that I got a dog and named him Milo. A Jack Russell that looked just like Milo and named him Milo. Does it get any better than this? Is there any movie that is more feel good and more just shit-eating grin on your face than School of Rock? This is Jack Black's movie. This is the one I feel like most people know him by, and for good reason. He's outstanding. He is lovable, and he's the teacher that I wish I had in school. The teacher that believes in you, the teacher that wants you to succeed, the teacher that will risk their own job, even though he didn't work for the school, to make sure that, you're happy. And he does some crazy things in this movie. The music is outstanding. And it's one of those movies that when I'm watching it, I just have a shit-eating grin on my face. Just, I cannot believe how good this movie is. Monsters, Inc. This was the movie that kind of shaped my childhood. And I had a ton of the toys. I remember I had a cousin that worked at a Kmart, and they had a giant sale on all these toys, and my grandmother bought them all for me. And playing with the toys, watching the movie, getting the VHSs, getting the DVDs, it was the movie that somehow followed me throughout my childhood and into adulthood, and there's something special about this movie. Pixar and their concepts they're simple, but yet they're so creative, and they're things that you don't really think about. There's been movies before about the monsters in your bed, the monsters in your closet. There's been movies since this movie that have done that concept. But this is the one that stands out the most. Giant monster movies. And found footage. Cloverfield. 2 of my favorite genres wrapped into one, and it's executed beautifully. And I remember seeing this movie for the first time and just being blown away with how creative and how alienating it felt, almost, because you don't know what's happening. There's no rhyme or reason. There's no explanation. It's just hell. And I love it. And I think that if you are into giant monsters, or you're into found footage, or you're into both like I am, this is your movie. This is the movie that's going to stand out to you in both genres. You got a friend in me, baby. Toy Story, like I was just talking about. My boy Woody over here was giving me a bit of hell earlier. We also got people like Buzz and Ham and Rex over here. Toy Story is Pixar. There's a reason why it's the only movie that Pixar has given 3 sequels to, rather, but 4 installments to. And each one is better than the last. There's ones that are definitely stand out to me. I love all 4 equally, but there's something special about the first one. It's the one that started it all, and it's the one that introduced us to these amazing characters that have stayed the test of time. Toy Story. We're getting towards the end here, people. We have Godzilla. I love the Monsterverse. Brought to you by, I believe, Lionsgate and Warner Brothers. Or is it Lionsgate? Or, oh crap, who is it? It's Warner Brothers and somebody. But Legendary Pictures, not Lionsgate. Legendary Pictures and Warner Brothers. I love the Monsterverse. I have loved all 3 installments so far, and Godzilla is my favorite kaiju. And it's one of those. This movie is so underappreciated in my book. It's something that I have loved since my very first viewing of it. And though I guess I can understand folks' critiques about this movie, I love it. Godzilla is a hero. Godzilla doesn't need to be the center character. I'm not going to get into it, because I can sit here and talk about this forever. Godzilla. Love this movie. If you want to enter into a world of pure imagination, and trust me, you do, you're going to want to watch Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. Gene Wilder at his very best. This movie captures so many hearts and so many imaginations. I want to be one of the lucky ones that got to go to the Chocolate Factory. When I watched this movie, I wish I was there tasting the chocolate river and licking the wallpaper and trying to get my hands on the everlasting gobstopper. Gene Wilder is Gene Wilder's Willy Wonka as a character is just mysterious. He's not who you think he is. And from the very beginning, he lets you know that. And there's just something about this movie and its music and its tones and its character developments that I absolutely love. And last but not least, and like I said, there could have been 50 more movies on this list, but I wanted to kind of keep it to where you understood what sorts of movies that I love. Beetlejuice. Beetlejuice. This is a movie that I have to watch during the Halloween season. Michael Keaton as Beetlejuice is absolutely fantastic, but you also have Alec Baldwin, Gina Davis, Jeffrey Jones, Winona Ryder. It's just, the cast is absolutely fantastic, and it's iconic. It's a movie that there's a part of me that wants them to do a sequel to it, but there's a part of me that knows this movie is perfect just the way it is. Beetlejuice, again, just kind of like Godzilla, though the title character, he's not in it too much. He pops in like an hour into the movie, and you don't necessarily feel that hour runtime leading up to Beetlejuice's first appearance. But it introduces so many interesting plot points and characters. And it sets up a world, it introduces a world, an afterlife that you don't really see in movies, and you haven't really seen since. And there's just nothing more iconic than this perverted demon, light or living exorcist, like Beetlejuice is. And it's a beautiful movie, done by the wonderful Tim Burton. And that's kind of some of my favorite movies. And it's definitely ones that I would recommend to any and everybody to watch. I don't think many folks can dispute a large majority of these movies. There might be a few that you might disagree with, but get a good thumbnail. But I think I said my piece, and I think that went fairly well. So down in the comments, if you made it to this far, put some of your favorite movies. What movies do we have in common? What movies do you want to add to that list? Just let me know. And I have a pretty big collection of movies, so there's chances that I own it and I've seen it, or I own it and I am going to see it by your recommendation. So thank you again for watching. Hope you all enjoyed. And until next time, guys, I'll be seeing you later. Peace. All right. I think that went pretty well.